Prehistoric times and the origins of epidemics. Around 9000 BC, a profound transformation reshapes humanity. No longer roaming in search of food, mankind settles, domesticates animals, and cultivates the land. In ancient Mesopotamia, the first villages rise, nestled close to herds of livestock. But with this new sedentary life comes an invisible danger. For the first time, humans and animals live side by side, and that proximity becomes a silent bridge for disease. Microorganisms that once remained in the wild now find new hosts in human bodies. As food production increases, so too does population density. Villages become towns, trade routes emerge, and war breaks out between competing groups. With every encounter, every journey, every act of war, pathogens hitch rides across the land. Though history leaves few traces, it is likely that the earliest epidemics, and possibly pandemics, take root during this era. Civilization is rising, but so is the shadow of contagion. The Plague of Athens and the Antonine Plague. With the rise of ancient empires came the first detailed accounts of pandemics. Around 430 BC, the Greek historian Thucydides documents a mysterious disease that tears through Athens. The city, under siege by Sparta, overflows with refugees seeking shelter behind its walls. Cramped quarters, lack of sanitation, and desperation fuel the spread. People fall ill overnight, fevers, vomiting, and violent coughing fits. The dead pile in the streets, and the living lose hope. The origins remain uncertain, but the disease likely traveled from Ethiopia through Egypt and Libya before reaching the Mediterranean. In just a few months, the Plague of Athens wipes out 25 to 30% of the population, tipping the war in Sparta's favor. Centuries later, around 165 AD, another plague emerges at the heart of the Roman Empire. Known as the Antonine Plague, it likely begins in Mesopotamia and follows the paths of Roman soldiers returning home. The disease, probably smallpox, spreads rapidly, killing as many as 5 million across an empire of 200 million. Rome staggers under the weight of loss. Trade slows, the army weakens, and civil unrest brews. These pandemics, emerging amid conflict and migration, remind us that war and disease have always marched hand in hand, two invisible forces that shape the fate of empires. The Plague of Justinian and the Fall of Empires. In the year 541 AD, the world witnesses its first recorded global pandemic, one that would echo through history for centuries. Known as the Plague of Justinian, it begins silently in the vast plains of Central Asia. The infection, carried by fleas on black rats, makes its way along the arteries of ancient trade, land caravans and merchant ships until it reaches the beating heart of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. The city, a dazzling hub of commerce and culture, quickly becomes a place of despair. Bodies line the streets, the air thick with the stench of death. Pope Pelagius II is among those who fall. Once the bacteria invades the lungs, human-to-human transmission becomes devastatingly fast. The empire's military campaigns grind to a halt as soldiers fall ill. Whole regions are crippled. The Byzantine expansion westward ceases, and their forces, already entangled in war with the Sasanian Empire, weaken beyond recovery. Trade collapses, cities are abandoned, and superstition takes root in the absence of scientific understanding. Meanwhile, Arab forces rise in power. As both Byzantines and Sasanians are ravaged by disease, Muslim armies begin their conquest of the region, meeting little resistance. The Sasanian Empire eventually collapses entirely. The Plague of Justinian, named after the reigning emperor who himself contracted the disease but survived, would kill between 30 and 100 million people over the next 2 centuries. It was more than a biological catastrophe, it was a turning point in history. A single bacterium, invisible to the eye, brought mighty empires to their knees. In the silence that followed the plague's devastation, a new political and religious order would begin to take shape, forever altering the balance of power across continents. Leprosy and social exclusion. Leprosy, an ancient bacterial disease, emerges from East Africa, according to modern genetic studies. As trade intensifies, the disease spreads through Egypt into Asia and Europe. But it is in medieval Europe, where population density increases and hygiene deteriorates, that leprosy truly finds fertile ground. The Crusades, with thousands of soldiers and pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem, inadvertently accelerate the spread. Though not highly contagious, leprosy's visible effects are terrifying. Disfigurement, open sores, and a slow decline of the body stirred deep social fear. The Catholic Church declares lepers as spiritually dead, souls beyond salvation. Communities respond with cruelty masked as caution. The sick are forced into exile, sent to live in makeshift huts on the edge of villages or in leprosaria, quarantine hospitals where they await slow, isolated deaths. Lepers are made to ring bells as they walk, warning others of their presence. They lose names, families, and dignity. Cut off from society, they are buried outside consecrated grounds. While leprosy seldom spreads like the plagues, its psychological impact reshapes medieval culture, law, and even architecture. The walls built to keep them out become symbols, not just of fear, but of humanity's struggle to understand and confront disease without compassion. The Black Death, the second plague pandemic. The 14th century brings death on a scale the world had never seen. From the wind-swept steppes of Central Asia, the Black Death, another outbreak of bubonic plague, begins its march. It reaches the city of Kaffa on the shores of the Black Sea, where the Mongol army, weakened by the disease, catapults corpses over the city's walls to infect its inhabitants. Whether by rats, trade, or siege warfare, the result is catastrophic. Genoese merchants fleeing the scene carry more than goods. They carry death. As their ships dock in European ports, plague spreads like wildfire. Cities fall silent, bells toll endlessly. Whole families vanish in days. The disease thrives in poverty, among the malnourished and those crammed into unsanitary housing. Doctors are powerless, their tools useless. Rumors swirl. Many believe the end times have arrived. Within a few short years, the Black Death kills up to 200 million globally, including nearly half of Europe's population. The continent staggers. It will take centuries to recover demographically. The plague becomes endemic, resurfacing in waves long after the initial horror. In Venice, desperate for protection, authorities enact a bold new measure. Ships arriving from infected regions must anchor offshore for 40 days. Thus, the quarantine is born. Its name derived from quaranta, Italian for 40. This practice becomes a critical tool in the centuries-long war against contagion. Global exploration and the exchange of epidemics. The age of exploration redraws the world, and with it, the landscape of disease. As Spanish and Portuguese ships push into uncharted waters, they bring not only weapons and ambition but a hidden army of pathogens. With the arrival of Columbus in the Americas and Vasco da Gama's voyages to India, civilizations that had developed separately for millennia suddenly collide. Europeans unknowingly introduce smallpox, measles, and influenza, diseases utterly foreign to Native American immune systems. Entire populations are wiped out before a single musket is fired. Some villages vanish overnight. In return, a virulent strain of syphilis makes its way to Europe, spreading rapidly. Tropical diseases also follow the wind. Yellow fever and malaria, carried by mosquitoes stowing away on ships, establish themselves in distant lands. Trade becomes a double-edged sword, connecting cultures while sowing devastation. The birth of vaccination. As epidemics ravage populations, medicine begins to strike back. In 1768, English apothecary John Fuster makes a quiet but revolutionary observation. Individuals who had caught cowpox, a relatively harmless disease, seemed immune to smallpox. Building on this, Edward Jenner develops the first vaccine, injecting cowpox to protect against one of history's deadliest killers. The results are astonishing. Over time, communities begin to resist smallpox outbreaks. It marks a turning point, the first time humanity gains an upper hand against infectious disease. The word vaccine itself is derived from vacca, Latin for cow, a nod to the humble origins of this breakthrough. From barns and pastures, a tool of salvation is born, one that will eventually lead to the global eradication of smallpox centuries later. Cholera and the struggle for clean water. In the 19th century, a new killer emerges: cholera. This bacterial infection spreads through contaminated water or food and strikes with terrifying speed. Victims suffer violent diarrhea and dehydration, often dying within hours. The disease doesn't discriminate, but it flourishes in crowded, unsanitary cities. The first cholera pandemic erupts in Bengal in 1817 and sweeps across Asia, Africa, and Europe. City after city succumbs, public health systems collapse, panic follows, and yet, even amid chaos, science advances. Researchers begin to understand the link between water quality and disease, laying the groundwork for modern sanitation. Over the next century, 5 more cholera pandemics unfold. The world is now aware, but not yet ready. The third plague pandemic and the rise of microbiology. In 1855, the last major bubonic plague pandemic erupts in Yunnan, western China. Slowly, it creeps toward the bustling port of Hong Kong. From there, ships carry the infection to the world's harbors. But this time, something changes. Science fights back. French biologists identify the culprit, Yersinia pestis, the plague bacterium, transmitted by fleas on rats. For the first time, humanity has a name for its invisible enemy. A serum is developed, rats are hunted, quarantine measures on ships improve. Despite scientific progress, British India suffers immensely. Over 10 million perish. China loses 2 million. Yet unlike before, this plague does not collapse empires. It marks the dawn of a new era, when knowledge can challenge nature's wrath. Influenza pandemics of the 20th century. Flu viruses mutate endlessly, and in 1889, the first major influenza pandemic, Russian flu, spreads from the Eurasian steppes to the west. But it is the Spanish flu of 1918 that delivers the most devastating blow. Born in the chaos of World War I, the virus mutates in the United States, then travels with troops to Europe and beyond. The war ends, but the virus does not. It races across continents, infecting a third of the global population. Hospitals overflow, coffins run out. In just over a year, an estimated 50 million perish. The world barely catches its breath before the next outbreaks. Asian flu in 1957 and Hong Kong flu in 1968, each claiming over 1 million lives. These pandemics, swift and silent, reveal the terrifying power of a virus too small to see, yet capable of halting civilization. HIV/AIDS, the slow pandemic. Unlike the sudden terror of plague or flu, AIDS creeps slowly, invisibly. Originating in Central Africa from chimpanzees, HIV enters human blood through hunting. It spreads along rivers and railways, silently reaching Leopoldville and then beyond. By the 1970s, Haitian workers unknowingly bring the virus to the United States. In 1983, scientists at the Pasteur Institute in Paris finally identify the culprit, HIV. It weakens the immune system, making the body vulnerable to other infections. AIDS becomes a global pandemic by 2005. Though prevention and treatments improve, the stigma remains. In just 3 decades, 30 million lives are lost. Today, over 40 million people live with HIV, proof that pandemics can kill not only the body, but also hope, dignity, and trust. COVID-19 and the reality of a globalized world. In late 2019, the SARS-CoV-2 virus jumps from animals to humans, most likely in Wuhan, China. The world, hyper-connected by trade and travel, becomes its playground. Within weeks, borders close, cities fall silent, economies stall. On March 11, 2020, the WHO declares COVID-19 a global pandemic. Despite medical advances, the world is caught off guard. Hospitals overflow. Entire countries lock down. Fear spreads faster than the virus. A new reality dawns. In a globalized world, disease anywhere is a threat everywhere. The unfinished battle. Even now, epidemics continue. The plague hasn't vanished. Outbreaks reappear in Madagascar and Seychelles. Cholera's 7th pandemic, ongoing since 1961, still kills 100,000 each year. Leprosy lingers with under 3 million cases. Seasonal flu claims 500,000 lives annually. Malaria, primarily in sub-Saharan Africa, takes just as many, mostly young children. In the quiet corners of the world, far from hospitals and clean water, the war against disease is far from over. Pandemics do not belong to the past. They are written into our future. From ancient Mesopotamia to modern megacities, one truth remains. Pandemics are not relics of the past. They are the shadows that walk beside us. Each era writes its own chapter of survival, fear, and discovery. But the story isn't over. In our next episodes, we'll explore how pandemics shaped revolutions, how diseases were used as weapons of war, and whether artificial pandemics could be the greatest threat of the 21st century. History warns, science arms us, but awareness unites us. Subscribe now to Virus Vault and join us on this journey through the hidden history of humanity's deadliest enemies. Don't miss what comes next, because the past may be behind us, but the next outbreak might already be here.